today at the Bangladesh Business Innovation Summit to discuss perhaps what is one of the most important topics of our time, innovation. My name is Farid. I'm the Managing Director of Hatch Consulting, and I'm delighted to take you on this journey on innovation. Today, I'll share on this journey, what is innovation, who are the stakeholders, how do you innovate, and why innovation is so important for Bangladesh as it leaps into its future. So at its very simple form, innovation is creating value from an idea. You get a breakthrough idea, it leads to the creation of new products or new processes or new services or new business models. That's the wow, the big, the new, the iPhone, Netflix, those examples. However, innovation's unsung hero is something much more important, and what actually happens with innovation most of the time, which is incremental improvements on existing products, existing processes, existing services, and existing business models to continue enhancing the customer services as well as the customer engagement with those breakthrough innovations. So the biggest thing about innovation is it's supposed to create value from an idea. What does this value actually mean? Well, we all know today that unicorns exist, believe it or not. How is that? Because innovation has created enormous wealth and commercial success for individuals and the ecosystem at large. Secondly, innovation has also been a great catalyst for social change. Healthcare, technologies, telemedicine, e-commerce, all have proved invaluable in improving people's lives. And hopefully, innovation does both, works for the social good, impacts the whole, as well as serves the few and enables them to continue creating. So what is the key to innovation? How does it work? Is just a simple idea enough? No, the idea alone is not enough. For innovation to go from a thought in our wonderful brains to an actual product or service or model is really something that requires a process around it, that requires many players coming together, requires resource. It has to be spread out, trying to harness many people's ideas. So it has to be inclusive. It has to be value driven. Some result has to be worth all the effort. And then ultimately, it has to lead to a solution for an existing problem or inventing something completely new. So innovation is ecosystem dependent. What does that mean? Well, if you have just an idea, as I mentioned earlier, or you're making incremental improvements, innovation usually has to solve for something. It has to solve the need of a pressing problem, and it has to basically either become something new or reinvention of something that exists. Certain triggers have to be there to create an innovation at all, particularly an ecosystem to get engaged and involved. These triggers are typically competition, technology, economic or human challenges, or even sometimes just an accidental discovery. Innovation is also most successful when there is buy-in and support, people interested in putting these ideas forward, people interested with an end in mind from this breakthrough concept, and people interested, most importantly, in investing in bringing these ideas to life. So who are these stakeholders and what are their roles and responsibilities? I would say somebody has to start the engine. Government, as we've seen in the case of Bangladesh, with Startup Bangladesh and many other initiatives, is the key innovator of all. If the government says and creates a framework around mindset, education, and brings in ecosystem players to fuel the engine, they're the ones who have to start the story. Corporates, they have to compete, they have to survive, they have to evolve to stay in business. So they have a real self-interest to be part of this as a stakeholder. Family offices in Bangladesh in particular have been the engines of growth and prosperity. They know the local customer, they understand the needs. They now have, in many cases, enormous wealth. How do you get them involved in the conversation? How do you help them solve for the greater good or to enhance their own businesses? Angel investors, where would we be without the angels? Somebody has to take the risk, the leap of faith, the belief in the idea, and help the innovator start developing it into something real. Startups, everybody knows what a startup is today. Well, without them, where would we really be? The masters of invention, the risk takers, those who come in with joy and who come in with intelligence and who create things often out of nothing or improve things which other people cannot see. NGOs and multilaterals, in the case of Bangladesh, are invaluable stakeholders. They have educated the entire community and entire population to come together and solve for things for the common good. Academia allow an environment where ideas can be exchanged and brought forward in a safe environment where failure is not at all denigrated, but instead allowed to thrive. So with innovation, however, to come to life, process is really important. You have to have a frame around it. And project management alone is not sufficient to do this. There have to be many players who come in with interest in the outcome. So at the beginning, when you're putting a process around innovation, you first have to ask yourself the important question: who are you solving for? Why is anybody wasting their time doing this in the first place? You have to keep your end customer and beneficiaries in mind. You have to take a big problem statement and break it down into actionable pieces. You have to pick your battles. You can't cure cancer, but perhaps you can create a device that can help at least impact a local cancer or a local disease somewhere in the body. So localization of medical needs or medical devices could be something like this. You can analyze where to play, where the future can be for the product or innovation. You can frame a strategy to risk manage resources, talent, money, and timelines, most importantly. And you can look where you don't know all the answers, you can look towards the ecosystem to bring more sources and participate. Most importantly, at the end of it all, you deploy, you test, and then when it's success, or if it fails and you try again, you continue to build the capability and competence to future-proof. There are, of course, barriers to innovation. Sometimes it's lack of vision, not understanding the need, being overwhelmed by the problem, not really being able to bring the ecosystem together to solve for a common problem. Resource, talent, capital, always the biggest issue. Educational barriers, regulatory barriers, technology not being available or not ready to solve for the problem. So I'm going to focus on one key stakeholder in the process, because corporates are the one key stakeholder, in my opinion, who can bring a lot of the ecosystem together and support the ecosystem in a very unique way. I've spent my career in multinationals and corporates, and I've seen it at scale. Often, what has always interested me most is that it has just started with an idea, either from an employee just in a suggestion box, or really from the experts who are hired to put these ideas together into execution. For stakeholders, such as corporates, there's complete incentive to support the ecosystem. They have to innovate to survive. Efficiency, money management, that's a value, but it's not enough to keep your business growing. There are also trends and competition that they have to follow and pay attention to. They have to retain their talented staff, and new ideas, new innovations, new purpose bring staff together and keeps talent. Valuation, of course, profit and shareholder value is a driver. Competition and strong demand is always underpinned. lastly, incremental benefits, who is better prepared and able to continue improving and continuously provide value than multifaceted multinational corporate organizations. I'll just touch on a very small case study that reflects how an ecosystem can come together. I've picked this, although it's from Germany, because it's very relevant for Bangladesh, and I do believe it's in the very near future. The EU was concerned about key things: pollution, employment, cost, and essentially how to reach people in the event of issues such as the pandemic. Well, one of the simple things that came up was last mile delivery. How do you solve for that pain? How do you get medicines, food, other necessities to the door when citizens can't emerge out? How do you do it in a cost-effective way? How do you let it create opportunity? And how do you then also ensure that the corporates are interested enough to fund some of the activities? Well, the idea was simple enough and very relevant in Bangladesh. A three-wheeler rickshaw was used to navigate the narrow streets, deliver packages from central fulfillment centers to the door, and do this in a cost-effective way, create employment for those who were the drivers and suppliers and logistics providers. It created good health in these trying times because people were riding their bikes. It created better air quality because the congestion from the big vans dropping one delivery to your door was no longer an issue. They were simply going to a neighborhood fulfillment center, which also had a network effect on jobs. There were less noise levels because it was electric. Bangladesh, with its success story to date, which I'll touch on in a minute, has had lots of things work in its innovation ecosystem. First of all, program after program has been rolled out because the customer is at the center. The needs have been prioritized and executed at scale, often using very frugal and humble innovation. In addition, Bangladesh has engaged communities and included women, important components to make sure that the catalysts of change, the decision makers, the people for whom the innovations mattered, were involved in not only in the dialogue, but also in the execution and on the benefit as well. And of course, investment from government, from multilaterals, individuals, from family businesses, and from all other people in the walks of life have contributed significantly to the success. So what has to happen next for Bangladesh? Well, really to keep doing what it's doing well, even better. Continue to see everyone as an innovator. Who can solve for what? What is their pressing need? Making sure, does it benefit the whole? And then validating those ideas. Identifying and addressing critical needs. That's what I said in terms of prioritization. It has to be stakeholder inclusive because you're solving for the communities at large. Prioritize the impact it can have because resource is always limited. Enable validation and commercialization. Bring the ecosystem for whom it's relevant into the conversation early and keep them all the way through. Focus on the key enablers, the key barriers, education, regulations, technology, investment. Put the fuel in the tank to drive this engine forward. Most importantly, fill the hearts and minds of this incredibly young population with the mindset for development, for innovation, for creativity, and for delivery. Bangladesh, I really have to end with the stellar story that Bangladesh has been writing for itself. From being one of the poorest countries in the world, it is now considered as a model for poverty reduction, according to the World Bank. Bangladesh has achieved one of the highest cumulative growths globally from 2010 to 2020. And now it's on course to become a developed country by 2041. Signs of progress, just have to walk down the street, are everywhere. You see a mindset, you see a commitment to change, for improvement, for every common denominator. for every citizen. Also see it across the startup ecosystem, the modern factories, as well as, of course, the development all around. Ultimately, I believe, with a continued precision focus, a clear strategy, and a mission to implement innovation, to create creativity, to create future generations, Bangladesh can create many, many generations of innovators to come. I believe exciting times await us all. Thank you so much again for having me here today to share my thoughts.